So the reason why I'm making this bed is that it's my daughter's birthday coming up, and I want to make her a nice gift. But it's really a gift to myself, to be honest, because she sleeps in the bed with my wife and myself and my son. We're all in the same bed, but I figure she's younger, but she's more independent. So I think if I get her out first, then he'll follow suit. So I took the crib mattress and I'm building a bed around it, shaped like a house. And I started out by making a frame. And what I'm doing in this video is I'm using the Festool domino to assemble the frame. And I mitered the corners, and I'm using the domino to cut mortises into the wood, and then use tenons, floating tenons, to put in those slots with a little bit of wood glue and mount the frame together. And I just got this thing for myself. It's expensive, but it is a superior tool. I used to use a biscuit joiner, and it's really no comparison. So I had to make a frame for the bed, for the mattress, and I made it a little bit smaller in height than the mattress. And then I had to make a base for the mattress. So once I got the frame together, all glued up, I put a few clamps on it just to pinch it together and hold it tight off of my little clamp board in the back there, which I built earlier that day. And that was fun to build. I needed to organize the shop. But I'm using these Collins clamps, and I'm putting them on both, two clamps on each corner, and then I went and took that to the back and let it dry up before I started on the base. And the base is basically a 3/4 piece of birch, and I edge taped it just to clean up the ends on it. And in this video, I'm just talking about different methods and edge tape trimmers that you can use. And if you're a novice, this is a good thing to learn how to do. Obviously, if you're advanced, everything is self-explanatory, but I hope you enjoy the video anyway. I could do a video on edge taping. Leave a comment if you think I should, or if you want to learn how to edge tape. A good wood file, which I'm doing in this portion, is really probably the safest way to edge tape I found over the years. They make 100 different trimmers, but none of them are fail proof. You learn how to get good with a wood file, some sandpaper, and you'll be all right. So anyway, I edge taped this thing up, and I sanded it up, and then I mounted some legs on the bottom, which I had these legs laying around for a while, and I thought they would be perfect for this project because they kind of give the bed, it's raised up off the ground, and it kind of gives it that castle girly look, kind of like a dresser. I took the frame and mounted it on the base, centered it, and then I figured I would put pocket screws. I used the Craig Jig pocket screws to mount the frame to the base. And I just had recently mortised these bench clamps into the outfeed table on my table saw, and they work nice. They're really good for locking down any material really quick and clamping it up. So once I got the pocket screws in, I took once I got the pocket holes drilled, I used the screws for the Craig Jig and centered it, clamped it, and locked it down. And that all worked out nice. And then my next step was basically what kind of house I wanted it to look like. And I just went with your standard gable roof and 4 walls. And the whole thing about the walls was that I wanted it to do windows on the front, a door, and I wasn't really sure after that point, but I found that the door needed to be pretty big because if she was already asleep, I didn't want to have to put her in the bed through a small door. So I wound up making the door really big and then doing 2 windows on the sides of the house. So what I'm doing here is just ripping up the 4 walls. And once I got the walls all cut up to size, I had to cut out the door right out of the panel. And I did the same thing with the window. And the door went pretty easy, but the window itself, because the window's in the middle, I kind of had to raise the blade up through the bottom of the material and not cut all the way through it because I didn't want to overcut on the bottom side, but almost cut all the way through it. And then I, just used my jigsaw to finish up the cut, and that came out pretty clean. But I didn't need it to be perfect because I knew I would trim everything out a little bit later. But once I got all my windows cut out and my door cut out, I just had to erect the walls. So that, is pretty simple and self-explanatory here, but I used these 3D squares and some clamps to lock the whole thing together, and then I put a little wood glue on it. And what I usually do, depending on the size of the boxes, I'll clamp it. I'll put some wood glue on it. I'll clamp it, and then I'll just tack it together with a finish nailer. And then I'll come back and I'll use like the countersink and the screw gun and put big cabinet screws in it. But once I got the box to really strong and mounted, I put it on the base and kind of centered it, and then I made marks on it because I wanted to use the domino again to use the floating tenons to attach the base to the walls. But the domino was a little too big, so I had to take the frame off the base to cut the mortises into the frame, and then I reattached it later. And I did the same thing. I flipped the house upside down and used those same ticks and made the same cuts on the underside of the walls, so that when I put the tenons in the base, the walls would slip right on top of it perfectly. But before I did that, I wanted to glue up the tenons in the base and install the tenons, but not glue the tenons into the wall because I wanted to be removable. This thing is basically made of 3 pieces: the base, the walls, and then the roof. So when I started on the roof, I basically free cut the material, and then for the ends, which was 36 degrees, basically 2 triangles, and then I hit them with a trim router and cleaned them up. I decided to make another frame to give a little more detail and to lift the roof away from the walls a little bit so that I could use the domino to attach the walls and the roof. So I made another frame, and then I ripped up some 2-inch horizontal pieces to attach the triangle pieces on the end, and then I attached those pieces to the second frame that is sitting on top of the walls. So that's what I'm doing here, and I had to install the 4 pieces of that together, and then I attached the roof to the frame that I made once I had cut the slots in it with the domino. And I did the same thing with the domino on the top of the walls. I cut the same marks, and when I flipped it on, I put a little glue on one side of the tenon and not on the other side. That way I could get the roof off. Then I basically just took a piece of 1/2-inch birch and ripped it at the same 36 degrees, and that's how I got the whole roof structure done. And the house is basically built now, and what I'm doing now is just cutting up 1/4-inch poplar stock, and I mitered these 2 pieces, and now I'm covering all the edges, all my screw holes, and trimming out the windows. I put some small moldings around the bottom just to give the base a little bit of detail, and around that same white strip on the top that separates the roof from the walls, I put a nice bead molding just to give that some detail as well. And then I just had to make some window sills and some casing, and I routed those up. I put a nice OG bit on the window sills, and then just put some 1/2-inch stock casing on it. And all that went really cool. So now I just have to paint it up. I'm going to make some planter boxes. I want to do some cedar shingles, and it's coming out really nice. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you have any comments, please leave them. I'd love to hear from you.